Ariana Jan, بسیار خوش آمدین. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate what you do for music, and more importantly, what you do for our community. And what I try to do is bring folks like yourself to the studio so that you can share your message with the young generation. And I especially appreciate that you're speaking in a common language that they can understand. So thank you so much.
Thank
You have some news for us. You have an album that came out not too long ago.
Yeah, well, I have an album that came out in 2009.
Right.
Called Lion of Panjshir.
Right.
I actually just finished a new album too, but yeah.
That one is
That
Lion
is
of
the
Panjshir.
Lion of Panjshir is the one that I recorded in Afghanistan.
And also a short film that I saw the teaser for, and we're going to talk about that. And in fact, we'll go ahead and show a teaser of the film itself, as well as one of your songs, Begun Taliban. But before we do that, I wanted to have you at least introduce yourself to the younger generation, as well as your educational background and where you come from. And
sure.
More importantly, of course, you were born here, and
I was.
If you could talk about that a bit.
I was born in Los Angeles, like in about 6 months after the Soviet invasion.
1979.
Actually, it was more than 6 months. I was born in October of 1980, so it was about 10.
Right.
About 10. Set December. I believe like December 21st was the Soviet invasion.
Yeah, it's a memorable day for all of us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And for me, it was really significant because my father's family had moved into our home 20 days before I was born. They were refugees. They fled the country, and my mom and dad had already established a life in LA, and so they came and they were living in our house, and it was amazing. Like, I grew up immersed in, even though I was in California, I grew up immersed in Afghan culture, and my grandmother and my aunts and uncles and cousins were all there, and it was a really beautiful way to have your childhood, you know. So I think that's a lot of
right here within LA. Now you're part of the majority, because a lot of folks like yourself in your age group and your demographic group are in fact like that. I was born in Afghanistan. I came here when I was 10, but my wife, for example, she was also born in the West, in Germany, and similar to you, so she shares the same viewpoint as you do, and so you are part of the majority.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I definitely am very much of both cultures.
Right.
I am very American in certain ways. I really love, you know, the way there are certain aspects of culture in this country, how those things were born.
Right.
Like, if you look back to like old music from the South, or the beginning of film.
Right.
Those are the things that really excite me. The more modern Western culture is actually a little boring to me, like, because I like things that have depth, and I think that some of our pace has lost that. So when I started traveling to Afghanistan in 2002, it was just completely changed my life. I went to film school. My whole life I've been an artist. I started acting when I was 4. I started playing music when I was 13. I have always written and studied photography and all these different things, and I ended up in film school, and I graduated right after 9/11, and my parents had moved back, and so I made my first trip in 2002, and it really changed my life. Yeah, it changed my life. Like, the second I saw the mountains, my life completely changed. And when I got there, I discovered like what love I have for this country. I mean, I completely fell in love with Afghanistan in a very deep way. So even though I was born here, I have a very, very, very deep love for that land. And there's something, you know, for me, like, so the American part of me likes sort of the roots of this country and is maybe not as excited about the like kind of flashiness.
Right.
But in Afghanistan, like, what I'm so drawn to is the ancient history, and this, like, you feel like you're somewhere that has not been touched yet, and that is so exciting.
Absolutely, and that's influenced your music.
Yes.
And also your film.
Yeah.
So your CD that came out a couple years back.
Yes.
It's called The Lion of Panjshir. Can you tell us, how did you pick the name?
Yeah.
And some of the songs, the background too.
It was very organic. I was making music, and I had been traveling to Afghanistan, and I'd been documenting in photographs and film, but it hadn't influenced my music yet.
Right.
And I was a musician. I was making songs, and then I had a band, and I went on a trip in it was December of 2005, and I brought my guitar on that trip, and a few things happened on that trip that just really affected me. I could feel a shift. It was the first time when I started to have doubts. Like, I started to feel something in the air that wasn't right. I knew that it was going to get worse. I just kind of felt it, and I went to a refugee camp, and it was just a heavier trip. And so I started to write about it. And when I came back, it was shortly after that, it was like within the year after that, my mom called one day, and I knew that things had really shifted there. And I had always had this dream since I was a little girl to record there with Afghan musicians, like with classical. Yeah. Right. And so I was like, we have to do this now. So we just, I mean, I found all of the like funding, and I got my bandmates to get visas, and we got on a plane, and we found.
Oh, so you took folks from here back?
I took 2 American bandmates. Yeah. Okay. And we collaborated with 3 ustads that were like in their, one was 88.
Wow.
And it was so incredible. Like, then once I started to play with them, in Kabul, like in my parents' house, it was so special, and it changed me as a musician because, when you're around like masters who are classical musicians, you can't, you have to adapt your playing
to theirs,
because there's, and you grow up quickly. You're like, oh, I have to play really well because these men are in their 80s and they're so talented.
Played for 80 years, maybe more, maybe less.
Yeah.
Now that's what I really I was drawn to your talent. When I first saw your video, I noticed that you were able to take the best of both worlds. You took the American culture and the Afghan culture, and you were able to fuse it together and come up with something that was so much deeper than one or the other. And in fact, we'll play the video in a few minutes, but I wanted to talk a little bit about some instruments that you play. I noticed that in the video you also had some information about some classical instruments. I was very impressed.
Well, I play guitar and piano, and I can pick up most instruments and play them, like, to an extent. Right. But I'm not, like, I didn't grow up playing rebab or, but since recording this album, I have a much deeper understanding of those instruments and play with more Afghan musicians, even young ones here. And but that it was very important to me to make something timeless that was very organic and didn't have any modern sounds really. Like, everything had to sound like an instrument, because in order to, what I was bridging was more what I was referring to earlier, like the spirit of American folk music, which was very, like, much protest music. It was peace music. It was a music of the people. And I feel Afghan folk music is also music of the people. And so I wanted the album to feel like my personal journey from my home here, discovering my home there, and returning. And I wanted the sounds to be very raw and authentic. And I also, and the political aspect was just really, naming it Line of Panjshir. I've always had like a connection to Ahmad Shah Massoud, and it wasn't, I recognized, my father kind of sat me down one day, was like, now, you know that if you name your album this, there's some people who are not going to agree, and your name, Ariana, is very unifying. Like, yes, I know. It was more his connection to poetry and art and the sacrifices he made, and I know that there are different opinions of the politics, and I recognize those different opinions, and it wasn't about like I'm Panjshiri, because like I actually have Panjshiri and Pashtun blood, but
most people do.
Yeah, but it was more about the spirit of, I wanted to have a name of something that stood for someone who's made a sacrifice, and
absolutely. So that's not only that, but you can highlight one person in one song, and at a later point, you can come back and highlight another region, another style, maybe another area or something that you like. And there's also another young artist, Salajan, that he also does
I play with him.
And he's just an amazing musician himself, and he's able to actually play the different types of the music from the region as well, and he can actually make his instruments speak, just like in your videos. Now, if we're going to go ahead and play the video, the first video, which is your song "Be Gone Taliban," and we're going to come back and I want to talk about that and how you were able to pick that name. So if we can go ahead and roll the first video, please.
Dreamt that I was flying, flew out the window and away from someone chasing me, but somehow I was free. Above the desert mountains I did see. They took our land by thinking they
welcome back. I hope you enjoy that song. So let's talk about the basis, the foundation for this song.
Yeah.
You told me a little bit about it. If you could share with the viewers, how were you able to take? What is the message behind the song?
Well, the song. So I directed this music video, but that was later. When I wrote this song, I actually had a dream that I was being chased by the Taliban, but I was flying over the land.
Okay.
And I realized in the dream that the land is so vast and ancient that nothing will touch it.
Right.
And this is what the song. So I woke up and wrote this song about our culture and our tradition being manipulated and like distorted and kind of the sadness of that, but the strength that it can't be touched. And so that was what the song was about, and it was an incredible process of working with the musicians there, the tabla player,
How were you able to find these people?
My dad found them.
Okay.
He helped a lot.
So he cherry-picked the best.
It was like, Dad, you have to find. He was like, Ariana, I found they're the best. They're the best for you. And it was so beautiful. It was so deep. Like, I became so connected with them. They were like, I felt like they were my grandfathers or uncle and grandfathers. And
they're old enough to be your great-grandfather.
Yeah. But I wanted them. I felt like it was important for the generations to do it together, to have the story of the land in the song. And then we brought it back, and my friend, who's an incredible composer, his name is Miguel Atwood Ferguson, he did string arrangements over it. And then it took it to another level, and then I had this idea to do this video, and I got this image of the burqa, the chaudhuri, being like a butterfly, like the cocoon. And I thought, like, rather, because the song itself has an intensity, I wanted the visual to be so beautiful and it to be a complete transformation from something repressed to something free. From going from the cocoon to the beautiful butterfly that flies at the very end. So I felt that it was a message for women, for the little girls that you see playing instruments. Absolutely. And as well as like a prayer to the future, and for the country as well, to like this emancipation of like the spirit of the land. Absolutely. It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song. Not only that, but it was recently in a magazine too. Oh yeah. In Soma. Can you talk about that? How you ended up on the cover? I ended up interviewing for this. They called me to interview for this magazine, Soma, and then I guess they just were touched by the interview, and then there was this image that they saw of me holding a sign that says "Begone Taliban" because of the name of my song, and the editor is like, you wanted it to be the cover, and so we reshot it specifically for the cover, and it was a very organic, beautiful process. Like it was such an honor, and actually this is the first magazine I ever subscribed to as a teenager. So and sure enough, you're on it. Talk about that. That was cool. Did you think that you'd be on the cover one day? No, I mean. Did you dream about it at least? No, I mean, I was probably just like playing guitar in my room. It was cool. When I went to go buy it at a magazine store, the very first song I ever learned to play on my guitar was playing in the magazine shack. I was like, funny. This is so funny. But so that video, I thought about everything, sitting with the costume designer and being like, okay, how can these costumes be something so beautiful but still have the modesty of Afghan culture, because I don't ever want to distract from the message. And then to sit with the choreographer and show her, she's working with ballerinas, and to show her the atan and have her incorporate that into there's a lot of layers of. So you've had some, obviously you wrote the music, you were able to compose it, you were able to direct the video, but all of this coming from one person, and you've had some very good folks that helped you along the way. And David Lynch, who's a very well-known producer and has, how many movies does he have? Filmmaker, yeah. It's just he was also a director of some of your work as well. He actually produced one of my songs and mixed my album, and he put it out on his label. He came to my very first show and said he wanted to produce my album, but I didn't believe him, because he's like one of my favorite artists of all time. Right. And so when I was in film school, I wrote papers about him, and I think he's like a revolutionary filmmaker, not just talented, but actually changed cinema. So that's his style from the beginning. I mean, you know more about him than I. Yeah. But from what I know, I remember as a young kid watching The Elephant Man. Scared me. But that's basically who he is, and so you've obviously done a wonderful job here.
But earlier when we were talking, you mentioned about your father.
Yes.
And how some of your music, and also the film, is also a foundation, and you were there because of your father. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, I grew up with my father, like very, very involved in the Afghan community and in trying to bring peace to the country and in any way he could. He was a banker here in LA, but he was always having meetings with your dad and other Afghans. And I, to be honest with you, growing up, I didn't understand. I just felt like it wasn't doing any good. I was like, no one is listening to you. Right. And I was like, and he'd have me proofread, like, read this. I was an English major. I was a film and English major. And so he's like, read this paper. I was like, Dad, I'm busy, And then once I went there, my life changed. You realized and it changed everything. And it became my cause. Right. And so when I've been documenting for 10 years all of my journeys in photographs and film and this album, Afghanistan became my muse for all of my art. And became my cause, and you meet all these children in refugee camps and orphanages and schools, and then you've made a promise, like you have to keep the promise. And
absolutely,
you dream, you dream about them. I have dreams about them, like, so it just was organic. My cause became the same as his cause, and we have a different method of, he's been rebuilding the banking system. For me, I've been doing this through my art, but as I sat down to edit this film of 10 years of footage and work and the music and the making of the album and all my journey and my family story, we discovered in the process of editing that the story of the film is really a lot about my dad and I, and how his influence really shaped my art. His influence of his activism. Right.
And making sure that you're successful and supporting you.
He's very supportive, both my parents, which is also a rare thing, I think, in our culture. The arts aren't necessarily always like...
Engineer, doctor,
lawyer.
Right?
But, I was, 4 years old dressing up as Madonna. I was like playing instruments and in theater, and they knew that as a child this was my calling. And I take it very seriously. It's just my obsession to make art. So they know that I'm not it's not a hobby.
That's your passion.
It's my passion.
And that's why you're successful at what you're doing. And you're able to actually take a message which is to help our motherland and to our people. Every time you've been there, I'm sure that you have a sense of feeling that these folks are looking at you for answers, and they're looking at you as the voice. And sure enough,
one of them.
One of them, naturally. And so you've actually taken that message across to the community here, because the community here is actually able to see that, and they can ask you, and that you can provide them with background on that.
Well, hopefully, when you study storytelling your whole life, at some point you become more mastered at it. Someday I'll be mastered at, hopefully, but now, I've become better at it, and so I hope that the hope is that you use storytelling to affect positive change and to lighten dark corners of the world, or bring a new point of view. And so I hope to always have sort of a magical element to things that's more playful and fantastical and special.
Absolutely. Well, just the way you were able to connect your story with a cocoon and into a butterfly, certainly the film itself is beautiful in itself. Tell me about how you were able to put that together, because over 10 years you took some videos, you shot some scenes. Was your plan to make the movie, or was it more for a family?
No, I was always making a film. Okay. My parents were like, you need to make a documentary. You just got out of film school, you're in Afghanistan, you have a camera. And I kept going, I don't know what it's about. And I just documented my trips. Okay. And it was so organic. The film made itself. I made the film, but it was making itself the whole time. And then when I started to realize, at some point when we were making the album, my friend came and was like, we'll make this film about your album. I came back, and then I was like, oh, but I have all this other footage, and I have all these interviews of my parents, and as she starts watching these interviews, and she's like, wow, your family story is so much part of it, this is this whole thing. And then I started to dig through the garage and find old VHS tapes and home videos, and it became this very organic process that I was taking bits and pieces of my whole life, my parents' lives before I was born. My Afghan grandfather, my mom's dad, who came from Afghanistan in the 1920s, like finding these old photographs and weaving it together in this larger thing. So it was really special. It was really the very organic way to make a film, especially documentary is supposed to kind of be that way.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the film, and when we come back after this video, then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the message that you have for some of the younger generation.
In the homeland of Afghanistan.
My name is Ariana Delawari. I was born in Los Angeles the year that the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. I was also born the year that my father discovered the purpose of his life, to bring peace to his country.
I think it's a great mistake if the free world would ignore what's going on in Afghanistan.
The Taliban banned all art.
دیدیم که با رادیو و تلویزیون بالکل موسیقی بند شد. کاغی آلاره بنوازن.
The Taliban were starting to gain power again. What if I can never go back there?
I want to go make this album now because we still can.
We have to do this now.
When do we get to see the film?
Well, so now we submit it to festivals, and it's a whole process before I can really show it to the public. But I wanted to make a trailer to give people a sense of what we were working on. And
absolutely. Now, what is the one message behind this film? We talked a little bit about the family. We talked a little bit about the cause.
There's so many messages behind this film.
Because there's so much emotion. You start off early on with your childhood, and it's such a beautiful story, innocent. And then once you get to showing the war and the music, there's quite a bit here.
I think you have to watch the film to find out the message for yourself.
Okay.
But for me, my journey, has been really to go back and discover this huge part of my identity. And it really, I feel like, as much as, you say I do, thank you for doing things for the Afghan community. I feel like Afghanistan has done more for my life than I could ever do. And going there has changed who I am and really brought out the best of who I am and made me a better artist and given me such a beautiful thing to make art about. And so I guess my message would be, I really encourage, the Afghan community, Afghans like myself who grew up in the West, to travel there and not be afraid and learn about go back to your country if you were born there, or learn about your country if you haven't been there. It will change your life. And I feel like as a globe right now, as a world that we can reach out and not be afraid and connect. And this is how we lead to peace. Like, this is how we discover new ways of being that are healthier. So I think it's
a great message. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We could spend probably half a day talking about this because you have so many other beautiful videos and
a lot of stories
and music. And but what we're going to do is bring you back shortly and hear a little bit more about your work. But as a starting point, thank you again for what you've done for our community. Thank you for the beautiful music that inspires folks, and to be able to put all that together. I could see the look on your dad's face in the video, how proud he was, and I'm sure he's going to be even more proud with what's to come in the